Steam's rating system is not good. I mean, it's good at something, but it's not good at what users expect it to do. Let me ask you a question. What does this score mean? If you said something like, this game is good, wrong. It's probably a good game, but that's not what this metric means. If you said something like, 95% of players like this game, also wrong. Closer, but wrong. The score means that of the people who bought the game and have run the game for at least 5 minutes, those who chose to write a review rated the game with a thumbs up at an aggregate rate of 95%. And this is a flawed metric. You can probably already see some of the reasons why that's the case just from my definition, but I'll get into the deficiencies in just a sec. Let's say it is flawed. Why is that so bad, and why does it annoy me so much? Well, it isn't and it doesn't, not really. I think there are worse things going on in the world, but I do this for a living, and in our day-to-day lives, we're kind of inundated with weaponized data. A lot of people misunderstand, or at least don't examine, the data they encounter in their day-to-day lives, and a lot of that data that we're acting on and making decisions on is poor quality, or not intended for the purpose that we believe it is. This is a relatively low-stakes example, but it is still illustrative of this, and I spend a lot of time on Steam, and it's bad. It's a bad metric, and I know why they chose it, and I'm not falling for it, and you shouldn't either. So the first thing wrong here is obviously selection bias, right? To review the game, you must play the game, and to play the game, you must buy the game. People buy games because they think they're going to enjoy them. The people who buy the game are the audience most likely to enjoy the game, ignoring any edge cases where the advertising is desperately misleading. This is especially true at launch. People who buy a game day one or week one at full price are definitely the core audience for a game, and as time goes on, deep discounts and bundles especially can dilute this population a little, but overwhelmingly this metric selects for people who will like the game. On the flip side, if you're checking user ratings, you are likely someone who's not sure if you would like the game. When you're reading one of these scores, you're probably implicitly thinking something like, oh, 95% of gamers like me liked this game. But you are not a member of the same population that is leaving those reviews. The next salient detail is that you need to write a review in order to score a game. This may seem innocuous. You can just write the word good and paste it in if you're only interested in providing a rating, but look at any game. What percentage of people actually do that? Not many. Imagine if YouTube forced you to leave a comment in order to like or dislike a video. In fact, try it right now. Leave a comment and then rate this video. I'll wait. Alright, perfect. Did you feel that? It's psychologically more difficult to leave a negative score if it's mandatory that you describe the reasons for your dissatisfaction. This is part of acquiescence bias. People generally have a tendency to be agreeable, in this case responding and rating in the positive due to politeness or the cognitive ease of doing so. If a player has a strong negative response, of course there's a kind of catharsis into leaving a scathing review, but anything outside of that extreme is weighted towards a positive response or no response at all, especially if you had a reaction of like, oh, it was okay, I guess. Being tied to a review also means that less people are going to score games overall, particularly if they don't have strong feelings or they don't have much to say about it. It just adds an extra layer of friction before getting to the part where you actually score a game. In this particular case though, I don't think this is super harmful on its own, as there's no way at the individual level to provide a middling score. So filtering out those people to some degree isn't significantly polluting the data. But that does lead me right into my next point, which is that their rankings are binary. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Now this I have seen people complain about, particularly because there is no rating for like it's okay or it's mid. In addition to that, it's not weighting the strength of the positive or negative sentiment at all. So you know how when you get a customer satisfaction survey and you usually have to rate your sentiment on like a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 10 scale? That's not arbitrary. When companies are collecting data for their own metrics, there are meaningful insights to be gleaned from separating a mostly positive score from a very positive score, even at the individual level. But Valve chooses not to do that. The result of that is that games most people feel are pretty good will float higher than games that some people feel are extremely good. It slants the rating to prioritize mass appeal over individual impact. This creates an environment where the vanilla ice cream moves to the front of the freezer. The games rated highest are the games that will offend the least of their audience. Last but not least, the score is aggregated. When you're dealing with user ratings, this is kind of just the nature of the beast, but don't forget that no population is a monolith. You are a special little person. Everybody liking something may not be a good predictor of whether you will like something. When combined with the lack of weighted scores on a platform where you have more games than you could play in a lifetime, this makes it actually a terrible metric for choosing which game you will like the most, as there's little guarantee that a game with a high score will be particularly resonant with you as an individual human being. Now, with all that out of the way, I think the biggest offenders here are the selection bias and the lack of granularity in the ratings, but the overall trend of the data is clear. So let me make a claim. The way Steam collects and presents user rankings of games trends towards higher scores. Now let's see if I can validate that claim. The average rating of a paid Steam game, according to Sensor Tower, a Steam analytics website, is 71% at time of writing, and that doesn't seem very high, right? If I check OpenCritic, it says the average IGN review score is a 74. And Metacritic scores also seem to average around 70%, depending on the year, although trustworthy analytics on this number are a little bit harder to dig up, but that seems about right, anecdotally. So 71% is pretty in line with what you would expect from the industry standard for video game rankings. But I'm tricking you right now. I'm not comparing apples to apples. We're missing a critical detail here, and it's not just that websites like IGN are often criticized themselves for inflating their scores. I'm talking about something a little more clear-cut here. Games journalists, especially big websites like IGN, don't review shovelware. According to Gamalytic, there were over 20,000 games released on Steam in 2025. That OpenCritic dataset for IGN reviews was just over 2,500 reviews. Do you know what the median revenue for a game on Steam is? $705. Steam is filled to the brim with well-meaning but misguided indie games and low-effort cash grab slop. Just go to SteamDB and look at last week's releases. Count how many of those have less than 20 top concurrent players. How many are Unreal Store asset flips? How many are games mimicking another more popular game, AI-generated garbage, or cookie-cutter Gooner games? This is not a rounding error. This is a lot of games. And there are good games, there are great games in here that IGN will never review, but the median Steam game is slop. And yet, the average Steam review score for all paid games is 71%. A full 22% of games, over 1 in 5, have a 95% positive rating or higher. Again, in an environment where many, if not most of these games are shovelware. This is a real thing. The result is that anything below 90% is perceived as kind of a bad score, because anything noteworthy is typically scoring above that range. This is bad for consumers because, first of all, it's just unhelpful. It can tell you when a game is dog shit usually, but is there a meaningful difference between a 92 and a 96? Maybe, but not to any degree that outweighs just personal preference. They're both just probably good games. I'm sure you've experienced this elsewhere, like when I go to Amazon or Google Maps and everything is just rated 4.5 stars. It's exhausting. It's worse than useless. In those cases, it's mainly because it's quite easy and profitable to bot reviews and pump scores up. Google and Amazon may not be doing this intentionally, but Valve set up this scoring system to be flawed. They could have had anything, and Valve has analysts that are better at their job than I am. They knew what they were doing. Valve knows about this problem. They chose it. Why? Well, you gotta pump those numbers up, baby. If everything is a 90, people are gonna spend more money in the store, full stop. Don't tell me you've never seen a 96% and thought, well, if it's good enough for 96% of gamers, it's probably good enough for me. I've fallen prey to this, and I do this for my goddamn day job. Less than 10% of Steam's games show up with orange text in their rating, negative or mostly negative, the worst of the worst. It's borderline manipulative, and I think it's a really illustrative example of how businesses use data, real data, user-submitted data, in a manipulative way. They're not grooming the data itself, no, but by setting up the conditions under which data is collected and displayed in such a way that the data the users choose to create furthers the objectives of the business. Anyway, I'm an octopus, and peace.